Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're stepping back in time to unpack a story of unimaginable wealth, dazzling intellectual achievement, and honestly, a fatal, tragic flaw. It's a true story about a society that literally had everything going for it, yet somehow slowly and meticulously tore itself apart from the inside out. We're going to look at the collapse of the Taifas, a period of profound contradiction in Islamic Spain, or Al-Andalus. So get ready, because the echoes of this golden house of cards, they are ringing incredibly loud today.
So how does a society at the absolute peak of its economic power just crumble? I want you to imagine, just for a second, a beautifully wealthy civilization, a place where the streets are paved with the literal profits of booming international trade, where art and agriculture are flourishing like nowhere else on Earth. But behind closed doors, in the shadowy, whispering courts of power, this same civilization is secretly destroying itself through bitter, relentless division. That's exactly the mystery we're decoding today.
Okay, let's dive into this. The blueprint for this mystery lies in the pages of Al-Bayan al-Mughrib by the great historian Ibn Idhari. Specifically, we're zooming in on the insights from the third volume of this epic chronicle. You see, Ibn Idhari meticulously documented the history of Al-Andalus and the Maghreb, but here he hones in on a deeply turbulent period. And he doesn't just give us dry dates and names, he gives us the economic data, the sociological shifts, the political drama. He shows us not just what happened, but why it happened.
Our source brings us to the Taifa period, the era of factions. Following the collapse of the strong, centralized Umayyad Caliphate in the early 11th century, Al-Andalus didn't just split in two, it shattered like glass. Imagine a unified, powerful country suddenly breaking apart into a patchwork of rival city-states, each one with its own ruler, its own army, and honestly, a massive ego. This extreme fragmentation is the backdrop for everything that comes next.
Now, you might think a shattered kingdom means an immediate dark age, right? Well, the exact opposite happened economically. As Ibn Idhari reveals, this era was a cinematic golden age of prosperity. We're talking thriving markets that were the absolute envy of the known world. Advanced urban planning meant cities were expanding with incredible, breathtaking architecture. Agriculture flourished thanks to new irrigation techniques, and craft industries were just booming. The streets of 11th century Andalusia were vibrant, full of the smells of foreign spices, the sounds of constant building, overflowing with just unimaginable wealth.
To really grasp this wealth, we have to look at the master crafts of the era. Ibn Idhari points to the manufacturing of tiraz, these highly luxurious, incredibly sought-after silk garments that served as massive status symbols across continents. Add to that the constant minting of gold and silver coins, and exquisite jewelry making reaching totally unprecedented levels of artistry. It was a sensory overload of prosperity, a society draped in silk and paid in gold. You could literally hear the clinking of newly minted gold dinars echoing through the courtyards.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sharp, almost unbelievable contrast. On one hand, you have unparalleled economic brilliance and innovation, but on the other, severe political fragility. How could a society be so economically advanced, yet so politically broken? Well, the rulers of these individual taifas were so obsessed with outshining one another, building bigger palaces, patronizing better poets, showing off their wealth, that they completely ignored the structural integrity of their own civilization.
They were getting richer, for sure, but they were also getting much weaker. This immense wealth was hiding a fatal fragility, literally a golden house of cards. Because these factions were so deeply divided and constantly plotting against one another, they became incredibly vulnerable to outside forces. To survive, these proud Taifa kings actually began paying heavy tributes, essentially protection money, to the rising Christian kingdoms to the north. Their factionalism blinded them entirely. They were literally using their booming economic wealth to fund their own eventual conquerors, all because they refused to unite.
You can just see the inevitable momentum of this tragedy unfold. In the early 11th century, the unified state fractures into these competing taifas. By the mid-11th century, they hit that incredible economic peak, but they are absolutely drowning in toxic political polarization. The rivalries become bitter and deeply entrenched, and that inevitable momentum brings us to the year 478 AH, or 1085 AD, a critical turning point, where the internal division became so overwhelming, the system simply could no longer hold itself together.
1085 AD is when the climax of our story. The situation in Al-Andalus became so dire, the divisions so fatal, that the Taifa leaders had to look outward for salvation. As our source chronicles, this is when the Almoravids, a powerful, unified empire from the Maghreb in North Africa, marched over the horizon and right into the Iberian Peninsula. Called in to save Al-Andalus from its own internal weakness, their arrival forever changed the landscape. The era of the independent, wealthy, but fatally flawed taifas was essentially over, swallowed up entirely because they couldn't stand together.
And this brilliantly illustrates why a text from centuries ago matters so deeply today. It serves as a profound mirror for modern societal and political polarization. Because, history isn't just about memorizing dates, it's about understanding human behavior. Ibn Duhardhari's Chronicle of the Taifas acts as a flawless, impartial mirror reflecting the dangers of extreme division. When a society decides that defeating its internal political rivals is more important than the survival of the whole, well, it's writing its own tragic ending.
Let's draw a direct parallel to our world today. Back then, it was city-states competing for regional dominance in physical echo chambers, completely refusing to cooperate. Today, we see fragmented global unity and intense digital polarization. We see factions retreating into their own ideological corners, prioritizing tribalism over common progress. Whether it's on a geopolitical scale or just within our own digital communities, the sociological phenomenon is exactly the same. We are kind of building modern taifas, walled off from one another, convinced that our specific faction is the only one that matters.
The story of Al-Andalus during this period is the ultimate cautionary tale. It proves that economic success absolutely does not guarantee survival. I mean, you can have the most booming markets, the highest GDP, the most advanced technology, but if your political foundation is rotten, it's going to fall. It shows us that internal division always invites external collapse. When you're busy fighting your neighbor, you leave the front door wide open. Ultimately, unity is the true currency of a civilization. Gold and silver coins are completely worthless if the society that mints them is busy tearing itself apart.
Which leaves us with one final haunting thought to reflect on. Are we building our own era of taifas today? As we look at our modern world, with all its dazzling technological wealth, yet increasingly bitter and entrenched divisions, we have to ask ourselves if we're repeating the fatal mistakes of 11th century Andalusia. Are we letting extreme factionalism blind us to our shared vulnerabilities? The history has laid out clearly right before us in the pages of Al-Bayan al-Maghrib. The question is, will we learn from their golden house of cards, or are we destined to let our own divisions write the final chapter of our era? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating historical text with me. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.